I went to New Zealand. I went to Rotorua in New Zealand.
Oh, really?
Saw the crazy mountain bikers, man.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
yeah.
went there and we just did like the go-kart racing
Oh,
downhill.
the sleigh. Yeah, that
Yeah, and
stuff's awesome.
on the dirt tracks as you're going up the ski lift or the lift, to get back to the top, you can see the mountain bikers going down and like, dude, you're on the edge of a mountain.
Yeah,
You know what
yeah.
I mean? These guys are going like, if you miss it, you're gone.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
life
See,
and death stuff.
yeah, 100%. I race World Cups doing that stuff.
Yeah.
No, man. I like riding mountain bikes, but you never get me mountain bike racing. I'll stick to sports motorbikes. That's my thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, I did a little bit of that as a kid too.
Yeah.
Yeah, insane stuff.
Nice.
Well, yeah.
Nice.
Thanks for
Okay,
coming
cool.
on.
No
Appreciate
problem.
it.
No problem.
And
Can you hear me okay with this? I'll put it right there. Yeah, perfect.
yeah, should be good. Yeah, I reckon we just jump straight into it.
Okay.
Welcome to the podcast. This is Before the Blow Up. Ted Cofie, everybody. Tell us about kind of growing up and your early life. I kind of want to. Obviously, we're friends with your daughter, and
Yeah.
so that's how we kind of got this on. And so yeah, we kind of. I was talking to her. I'm like, oh, what should we ask your dad? And then and she was like, oh, talk about just kind of go through.
Go
And
for
so
the timeline,
yeah, I
back
reckon
to the beginning.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, I'm the last of 7 boys.
Wow.
Yeah, my mum wanted a girl, and she never had a girl. So I'm the last of 7 boys. I grew up in England. I was born in England.
Yeah.
I grew up in England to immigrant Ghanaian parents. Both my parents from Ghana. And, like growing up in England in quite a racially radical, 60s and 70s and 80s, my parents, they faced a lot of, I'll just say adversity,
Yeah.
and they grew us up as typical immigrant parents do, be polite, respect this environment that you're in. When
Yeah.
you go to a new country, you're kind of like, you're welcome, do what they say, get an education and follow the system. Really, how I really grew up. My dad was an army guy. He was disciplined,
Yeah. Wow.
and I've taken on that discipline through my life. Just if you're not early, you're late.
Yeah.
Basically, you know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
And it was just no in between,
Yeah.
so it was quite autocratic in the way that, methodologies and systems were implemented. I didn't know they were being implemented then, but they were really. And then from there, I went to school in England. I'm fluent in my mother tongue because both my parents are from Ghana.
Yeah.
Spoke English and I went to school. Was a very good athlete at school. Being the last of 7 boys, right?
Yeah, you had to
learn
be
how to run
competitive.
very
Yeah,
quickly.
yeah.
Apparently, I walked at 8 months old.
Really?
Yeah, because my brother, 2 brothers up from me, used to like drag me around, and like my knees were like bleeding because he would like pull me like because I couldn't walk.
Wow.
At 8 months, I was walking, and
Quick learner, eh?
at 1 year old, I was like running, jogging, because to keep it with my brothers. So I guess that's what accounted for my sprinting. I was an all English sprinter as a kid.
Wow.
Yeah, and I did all the things that you do as a young athlete. I played football or soccer, as you
Yeah,
call it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was a runner, but particularly I was a sprinter and went into the sprinting circuit as a kid. And then, we'll get to it, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah.
When I got to 17, I kind of fell into boxing, but I had all the athletic kind of attributes anyway from,
Yeah, yeah.
from being a young runner.
How did you fall into boxing from sprinting? What's sort of the steps you take to get from a sprinter to a boxer?
Well, I'll cut a few years in between and I'll go to how I became a boxer. So in my last 2 years in school, there was a massive teacher strike. I don't know. You can look up Maggie Thatcher, Arthur Scargill, and all the things that happened in England back when the government were fighting. Well, that government conflict created all the teachers in Britain to go on strike. It was a lot to do with, privatization, independence, industrialization, a lot of things that was going on in England that was really outside of my purview.
Yeah.
But it affected me because what used to happen in England was in your last 2 years at school, you would get scouts come and watch you and choose you for soccer teams or athletics clubs or whatever it may be. So teachers just refused to do it at that time. So all we would do is go to school at 8:30 or 9 o'clock and go home at 3:30. There was no
nothing
soccer. There was no athletics. Oh, I was forced to play rugby at school too because I was a fast runner. Right?
Yeah.
I had to be a winger. So
Yeah.
I didn't understand it at all, but I played it. And I was forced to play cricket as a fielder. So
Oh
I
no.
didn't like rugby and quick cricket. Had I known I was coming to Australia, I would have probably loved it. Um, yeah, so we had a teacher strike, which means we couldn't do any extracurricular activities at all. So a friend of mine basically said, "Look, why don't you come to boxing gym to keep fit?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, why not?"
Yeah.
So I went to the boxing gym, and if you're good at one sport, you generally good at another. I mean, there's
A lot
just
of like
things,
overlapping.
you got to
Yeah.
tweak if you're good, right? And that happened to me. So like, I was a street fighter as a kid. I always grew up fighting. There was a lot of racial divide. And I had a baby face as a kid. Like, I mean, I looked really infantile when I was like 12 years old, but I was a good fighter because my dad taught me how to fight. My brothers taught me how to fight, and we had a lot of street fights back then in schools, anyway. Um, but I hadn't learned how to, combat fight, if you like, which is basically it's outside of the realm of general fighting because it's really highly skill based. Fighting is highly skill based.
Yeah.
You'll see that because when you get two very, very, very good fighters, often it can be quite boring to watch because
Yeah.
none of them are making mistakes. They're all trying to, find an angle, but there is no angle. So this is why really two really good fighters, Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather, waited 5 years for that fight, and it was like there's nothing happening because they're both so elite. Anyway, long story short, so I went to my first gym, and my Scotch trainer Danny, I was 17 years old, and after 2 days, he's like, "Oh, go and do some sparring." I was like, "Okay, no problem. I'm a fighter." So there was a guy, his name's Mark McBain. I'll never forget. It was my first real fight in a boxing ring, and then we put the gloves on, and Danny was like, "Okay, move around, kid, move around, kid." That's a Scottish accent. And she's like, "Jabbing, move," and so I learned how to jab. And then this guy he saw everything coming. He was blocking my jab. He was missing. He was slipping. I was like, "I can't hit this guy." And then in the second round, he kind of slipped and went boom and hit me in the body, hit me in the stomach. I was like, "Oh," I continued, but like,
Rocked you a bit.
oh,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was royal. I was beaten, right?
Yeah.
Because I suddenly couldn't choke this guy. You know what I mean? Like, and as a young fighter, you learn vital points to stop people quickly so you can run off. In the knees, throat, things that you shouldn't do in the street nowadays. But you learn them as a kid so you can boom hit someone, disable them for a couple of seconds,
And get away.
As a fast runner, my dad was like, "You do this, boom, and you can get out to a safe place." So this is what I learned. But suddenly, this guy was really good. So at the end of it, I'm like, Danny said, "No, come back, kid. You know what I mean? Come back, kid. I'll teach you. I'll teach you how to do what he's doing. But you're a good athlete. You'll be able to do it better." So for about 2 weeks, we trained. And Danny was like, the first thing I learned in boxing was the parry. Now, the parry is if you got your guard like this, if somebody jabs you, you just touch it to the side.
Yeah.
And what that does is that takes their momentum offline and just stops them hitting you directly in the face. That was the first thing I learned in boxing and saved my career, an 11, 12-year boxing career. That saved my face because I used to parry. It was the first thing I learned. And from the parry, I learned to slip and come back with the right hand. I learned to do body shots and everything. So I got in the ring 2 weeks later with Mark McBain. And, Danny was in the corner. "Okay, kid, you know what I mean? Like, if when you get in there, you're going to be a bit stressed out, but don't be stressed. Just think about everything I've taught you. Remember, this isn't the fighting game. This is a skill game. Whoever's got the best skills is going to win." So I'm sparring Mark McBain. First round, I was like, wow, I was able to block his punch. He blocked a couple of mines, but I could block his. He couldn't touch me. And, 2 weeks I learned this. So in the second round, I said, right, son, remember, hitting in the body. Now you can hit him in the body, make him miss to the head and then go to the body. I was like, okay. So he went to hit me with the right hand. I slipped, I went whack to the body. And he went, oh, and he went down and he said, stop. And I was like, wow. And Danny says, "You got it, kid. You got the goods." You know what I mean? And from there, really, I was hooked to boxing. I was
Wow.
hooked. That was my first 2 weeks in boxing. And it was a little gym and that was it.
And so Danny was the guy that was training you.
Danny was the first guy that trained me as I went into the gym, and it was just an amateur gym. A couple of pros there, but it was an amateur gym. And he was the first person that had ever taught me how to fight from a boxing perspective. I knew how to punch, I knew everything, but how to, minimize somebody hitting you and you hitting them back.
And so was he a bit of a mentor for you, or was there somebody else that was a much more of a mentor for you kind of going into that boxing scene?
I had far more illustrious mentors, which I can tell you about. But he was my original mentor because, it really wasn't about money. It really wasn't about notoriety. He was just, if I look back, he
The
was a
art of
50-year-old Scottish guy that loved fighting. We had lots of street kids at the time roaming around the street, not knowing what to do. But when I was a kid, we had lots of, parks and, boys clubs and fun fit things we could go and do.
Yeah.
And he was one of the guys that just took his evenings out. You come to the gym and he'd pretty much train you. And the gym fees were next to nothing.
Yeah, that's good. That's
So
really
I
good.
was there for probably about a year.
Jeez.
Just learning how to box, learning the fundamentals.
Yeah.
And I literally just fell in love with it. Because I was like, this is amazing. So he definitely was my initial mentor in boxing.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Did like boxing give you more confidence like outside in every area else of your life? Like just being able to communicate with people, did it give you more confidence in that way as well?
Yeah, 100%. Look, I was always, I'll quietly say I was always quite confident. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
when you're fighting your way to the dinner table and you're doing things
Yeah.
as a young kid of many older brothers, you kind of learn to have to fight for what you want, if that makes sense. So I was always, I won't say I was outspoken, but I was always quite confident. You know what I mean? Like back in the day when I was a kid, like if we got into a fight and, the other person got the better of you, my mum would be like, send one of my older brothers, like, go and get them, go and fight and make sure he wins. And you would just kind of go back and it would all be arranged. 4 o'clock after school playground, there's going to be a fight, Ted versus Mark, and you'd go there and you'd fight. And
That
we'd
sounds
fight.
like a movie, man.
Yeah, but this is exactly what we do. And that it happened to me once. There was a guy named Mark. So I'm going to just give you a quick rundown of what happened. So he was what, I don't know if you know what mods are, but we used to have mods when I was a kid in England. A mod is somebody that wears like a green Harrington jacket, tight jeans, and Dr. Martens.
Yeah.
Oh,
Red
right.
laces. Not racist, but just there's other people that wear that type of stuff. But he was like a mod, so he was part of the mod squad, and he got into a fight in the school playground during school hours once. He hit this guy, knocked him down, and then started kicking him in the head 10 times. People were watching, oh, he's a madman, we don't want to fight him. Well, I got into a fight with him. We were playing football, and I fouled him, and he came to hit me. And this was before my boxing. I knew how to hit, right? So I hit him back and we got into a scuffle. Little did I know my older brother was watching it. And it was a scuffle, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he was bigger than me. He was 2.5 years older than me, and I was a skinny young kid. So my brother's like, don't let people push you around. I saw him wrestle with you. Why did you do that? Right, we're going to go back and fight. So we arranged the school playground. I got into a fight with him. And he said, use your skill. You hit him hard. You use your speed. So we got into a fight, and like my friends were like, oh, I saw him kick him in the head. What are you going to fight him for? So my brother watched, and all the school watched, and we fought, and I got the better of him in the fight.
That's cool.
That's
That's so
like, and it was the done thing.
It's a movie, man.
It was the done thing. It was great.
Yeah. That's amazing.
And so, like, a lot of these fights when you were younger, what were they? Because you talked about a lot of racial diversity in the area. Was it kind of based around race?
Always.
Really?
Yeah. I've always been very even tempered. Always. Because like as I say, as the son of immigrant parents, you're kind of embedded to be polite.
Yeah.
Because your parents are always like, we're in a different country, be polite, obey the law, do everything. You're like people that have, generational residency in a country are kind of like,
Yeah.
what are you going to do? You're not going to kick me out. I mean, so the mentality was always, be courteous to people, be this and that and the other. So, we were always called racial terms. It never bothered me. You shrug it off your shoulders, water off a duck's back, never bothered me. But when people called me the N-word, it infuriated me.
Yeah,
I would
understandable.
always get into fights for that, and I would get in trouble at school because people would call these words. And when I remember, so I was in school class once, and I was only 11, and I won't say his last name, but this guy named Carl. He so his book was on top of mine, and teacher was like, okay, come and pick your books up, your exam results. So I picked up my book, looked at my mark, and I moved his book and picked up mine. And as I moved his book and picked up mine, quack, he's hit me in the side of the face.
In class?
In the class. In the classroom.
Oh,
The teacher saw
my.
it. Don't touch my book. N-word. I was like, okay, no problem. So the teacher sat down and saw it. I was like, the teacher looked at me. I was like, the teacher didn't want to do nothing because half the teachers were just as bad. So I sat down and I said to my friend behind me, 4 o'clock, school fight. Me and Carl put the word out. You know what I mean? So he was walking across the school playground to the school park because you know if you're summoned to the playground, you got to go to the
Yeah,
playground.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he was walking to the playground, and I was almost at the playground and came behind him, and I was like, "Yo," so because I don't like hitting people from the back, and he kind of turned just as before we got to the school playground, and I cracked him, and I beat him up. Do you know what I mean? And
You were 11 at the time.
I was 11.
Wow.
I was 11. And so people would see other people fight, and you'd start to get a bit of a reputation, and sooner or later I didn't have to fight. Always
Yeah.
prefer words, but this was how I grew up. This is how I grew up. So kind of falling into boxing was it wasn't a massive fear factor, but if you look at how I used to box in my boxing career, I was not like an aggressive Mike Tyson because boxing to me was sport. I only, until I was 25, I only thought of boxing as sport. I didn't think of it as fighting, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because fighting was something you had to do very quickly to dispatch and disable your opponent. It wasn't something, I'll fight for 10 hours and see how I go. It was quick actions. When we learned how to fight at school through my brothers, through my father, it was create a quick action, disable your opponent so you can
Get away. Be safe.
exactly be
Yeah.
safe. So when I learned to box, it's like, oh, wow, we're dancing around round by round. Wow, okay, slip, move, jab, parry. And it was all kind of fun. And I never understood boxing until I was about 24 or 25. I know it sounds weird. Because I was traveling the world at 20, 21, 22, and I was like, I thought, people are paying me money to fight. When's the penny gonna drop? But then I just later on in my career I started to understand the business of boxing. The promoters, taking advantage of people, and so I started to kind of dislike it.
Wow.
The fundamentals of boxing didn't give me great pleasure, and so essentially I came out of boxing. I retired at 30 years old, which is quite young because I was the fittest in my life at that point, and but because there were other things that created discomfort in my mind around this sport. I always wanted to be a runner, a sportsman. So fighting and boxing was always like, oh, this is a sport. Let me create as much elegance and beauty as I can, and this is how I fought in boxing.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see how the almost progression of it being a defense mechanism,
Yeah.
fighting, and then turning into something that you loved into a sport. I
Yeah.
think that's really interesting. And so then I don't want to jump the timeline
No problem.
at all. And so I think we'll go back to when you started boxing and
Yeah.
going from being an amateur boxer going into a pro boxer. What did that look like?
Well, I think I've said it before, but I can say it now. I never actually fought amateur.
Oh wow, you just went
Never
straight.
fought
Really?
amateur. Never had one fight amateur. So in England, in order to fight, I mean, this is going to get out there now. I don't suppose it's going to matter. But in England, in order to fight professional, you need to have had 12 amateur fights.
Wow.
So I went to the British Boxing Board of Control, applied for my license, was like, we've never seen you fight. So yeah, I've had 12 fights. So who have you fought? I made up 12 names, and they interviewed me. And Mike Shinfield, if you're watching, love Mike Shinfield. Haven't seen him for 30 years, but would love to see him. And a few other guys kind of interviewed me. And I said to Mike Shinfield, yeah, I fought in Ilkeston, I fought in London, I fought in Birmingham, I fought it. It's like, yeah, we'll pass him, but we need to see you spar first. We need to see you box somebody because we haven't really seen it. I said, yeah, I've laid low in the amateur scene.
Yeah.
So they put me up against this big guy when I was sparring. Like the officials from the British Boxing Board of Control came to one of the gyms I went to. They brought a guy. They said, okay, fight. And this guy was massive. Like, he was a heavyweight, and I wasn't a heavyweight. So I fought him. And 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 So we boxed 3 rounds, and the guys like, oh God, like he can punch for a little guy, and the guys are like, after 2 rounds, they're like, we've seen enough, man. You can really fight. You know
Wow.
what I mean, so they gave me my British license, and that's it. I was on the pro scene, man. I was on the pro scene.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane. That
Yeah.
is wild.
Wow. Talk about getting in and landing your first pro fight. What was that experience like?
Well, I signed with a guy named Jimmy Gill, who was kind of a good local manager at the time. He loved me because obviously, like, I had all the tenacity, spirit, drive, and all the intention that you could ever dream of as a young kid. Because, having the opportunity to be a professional boxer was, to me back then, it was such a joy. You know what I mean, because you got to remember, like, I signed pro at like 19 or something, or 20, but I don't even boxing for 2 years.
Wow.
Like, if you've been boxing since 8 years old, it's kind of, you've been to the amateur scene, the world championship, golden gloves. It's kind of like a progressive circuit, almost like me with running. When I was a runner, I did the All Englands. I did everything. I was a
Wow.
fast runner.
That high level.
Yeah, I ran at 13 years old. I was running 11.3. At 14, 11.3. Yeah.
Far
And
out.
yeah, at 15 years old, I was 10.7. And this was 10.7 with just the tracksuit and regular pants, not spikes. I ran 10.7 with regular pants and trainers on at 15 years old. And the Olympic qualifying back then was 10.4.
Wow.
That's
At
ridiculous.
15.
At 15.
I can't even run that fast now.
At 15.
Yeah, that's
No problem.
insane.
No problem. So had I have gone into the athletic circuit, I probably would have been a bit of a different person, because for so many years I was so appreciative of boxing, because I was like, wow, I've mastered this new sport, and I'm and suddenly I'll get onto my mentor now. So I've been very fortunate to meet a lot of very high level people in boxing. So I went up to Sheffield and I trained with, Harold Graham, who's one of my favorite boxers. If anyone's watching and loves boxing, Harold Bomber Graham. That's the gym where Nassim Hamed came out of. Johnny Nelson was there, and I knew all them guys as a youngster. From there, I trained I trained at Peacock Gym. I trained at Camberwell. I trained with Lennox Lewis.
Wow.
I went my most what started me off early in my career, because I was really kind of eager to kind of derive and create knowledge for myself. So the Kronk gym was like the best gym in the world at the time. So I made contact with Emmanuel Stewart, who was very, very, very famous, incredible trainer, stroke mentor, manager. And I went to the Kronk by myself.
Just on your own whim, just like it's the
Just
best
like,
one to go
yeah,
there.
Just like 21 years old, I just went to the Kronk. And and I mean, this is the point where you're like, people carrying guns and walking through the street in Detroit. You know what I mean? So I'm in Detroit. And you got to remember, so when I was 20-ish, and you say to your mom, oh, I'm going to America, goodbye, no mobile phone, no electronic device. You just disappear on the airplane for 15 hours, 24 hours. Then when you appear, you find a phone box and you ring your parents. So you're really by yourself. So I hadn't traveled, and I put all my money, $2,000 or something I'd saved for 6 months, in my suitcase, in a pouch in my suitcase, and hid it when my suitcase got lost.
Yeah. Oh.
So I arrive in Detroit in April, right? It's right next to Lake Michigan and Chicago, so very, very, very cold in the where was I? In autumn, it's springtime, and I just instantly got this really, really bad flu, because I had this really kind of sleek, beautiful Adidas tracksuit on. Adidas was massive back then, by the way, but it was really layer thin. And I put that on. I thought, when I get there, because it wasn't that cold in England when I left, I thought, when I get there, I got my jackets in my bag. I take my suitcase, but I lost my suitcase. So I'm walking around car parks and walking on the street and trying to find my way in Detroit, and I just, the freezing cold's hitting me on my head, so I instantly get this flu. And I remember, so I'm walking through the car park, and I went to lost baggage, like, I've lost my bags, and then so I'm walking around, and this lady, and I've never seen her to this day, and it's just coming back to me now. So this lady comes up to me, like 40 years, 45-year-old lady, mother type black lady, comes up to me and says, are you okay? You're not from around here. I was like, no, I'm English. She's like, well, where are you going? I said, I'm trying to get to the Cronk gym, but the phone's not answering. And I've got no money and I've lost all my luggage and I've done it. She went, really? She went, don't worry. I'm going to take you to a motel. Give me the guy's number you're trying to contact. I'll ring him and tell him to pick you up from the motel. She drove me to the motel, dropped
Wow.
me there, paid for the night, and disappeared. And the next morning, Emmanuel Stewart and one of the guys came over and picked me up.
What a blessing.
That is crazy. Like, imagine if that never happened.
Yeah, amazing.
Wow.
So he rocks up the next morning, said, I'm sorry, I was out of town. I had a fight last night, blah, 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 blah. Took me to the Cronk. So I sparred there. I sparred Leonza Barber, Dennis Andres, Jeremy Williams, and I was sick. I was really unwell. But I was sharing a house with Dennis Andres. He could see that, I was a talented athlete because I was trying to run in the mornings, but I was just really depleted and sick. For about a month. I was there for 2 months. And then after a while, I started to come back and be strong. But when I left, Emmanuel Stewart was a very good trainer. But if he saw something and didn't like it, he'd be like, oh, to hell with that. He wouldn't be like, oh, let me give you 3 months to develop. So initially, I don't think he really liked me because he thought, you got no talent. What are you doing?
Yeah.
But I stuck around the gym for 2 months and I trained and Michael Mora back then, who was a very famous boxer, he took me in his SUV and we drove around Detroit and, he was like, man, you're the youngest coming in, man, stay strong, man, you'll be cool. And he was really nice to me. And then I left Detroit, went back to England and stayed in touch with Dennis Andres, who was the WBC light heavyweight champion of the world at the time. So they called me in London. I was his chief sparring partner. And Emmanuel then loved me because we spent 2.5 months in London together. He's like, man, you can really fight. And Dennis was like, I told you he can fight, man. The guy was sick. And I was like, wow. So I really got to know Emmanuel Stewart really well. I was scheduled to fight in Vegas on the show called Mortal Enemies when Riddick Bowe fought Jorge Luis Gonzalez. I was supposed to fight that night, but I got caught in LA. In something happened and I couldn't get into Vegas till that day. Back then they had a law where you got to be in the state of combat 24 hours. I was only there. I couldn't get in the night before. So they gave me everything. Like they gave me, I had fight cards, I had everything, but I just couldn't compete. So I sat next to Lennox Lewis and Emmanuel Stewart and, we watched all the fights of the night. So at that time, Emmanuel Stewart became, a little bit of a mentor because we used to speak a lot. I'd meet a lot of his fighters. He traveled the world. I knew his phone number. And then from there I just I kind of got to know boxing and came to Australia. The reason I came to Australia is because I have a kind of like a little birth disorder with my eye, which is not visual, and it's not even repairable. But the British told me I got to go to Harley Street and have an evaluation. Harley Street is like London's top hospital road.
Right. Okay. Yep.
To see a hospital is like £300-400.
Yeah, wow.
That was in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, that's
I
a lot
got
of money.
£250 for my first fight, and I'm paying
wow.
£300 to see a doctor. So the doctor, I'm like, I can't keep going back and seeing these doctors. You know what I mean? And the doctor was like, oh, no, we can't. So they sent me to a local GP who said, oh, we can't pass you. And so I said, okay, well. So I fought overseas. And when I came to Australia, I saw the best eye surgeons here and they all gave me the tick of approval. I fought in Germany, the best eye surgeons, fought in the US, best eye surgeons. I've actually fought in Fiji and New Zealand and other places, but I've never had a problem. So it just, that kind of indirectly got me traveling around the world.
So what's wrong with your eye? Why would everyone else tick you off but not the UK?
Because I have with my eye, like my mum had my mum got meningitis when she was pregnant with me.
Wow.
Right.
And meningitis causes birth defects. It can cause birth defects. But she couldn't abort me because she was too pregnant with me. She was like 4 months pregnant and she got meningitis. And they said, well, that can create birth defects. We don't know what defects it can create, but it can. So what it did was offset my optic nerve by about 1 millimeter. That's it. Nobody could figure it out until I was like 7 years old, because then I could express like, when this eye's closed, this eye can't see as well, and this happens. Oh yeah. And then as I got older, doctor said, look, that happens to about 1 in every 50 million people. We know what it is, you know.
Right.
And it was actually an ophthalmic surgeon in this country that told me what it was and gave me a letter to travel the world and say, no, you're
No,
100%
you're sweet.
fine.
Yeah.
You're 100%
Wow.
fine. But back then, I mean, England is very bureaucratic, very systematic, very stuck in their ways. And, and I'll give you an example of what England's like. So I was in England last year, and I wanted to give my little two nieces and nephew £10 each to just say, yeah, have a little something to spend.
Yeah.
So I go to the shop and I say to the woman, like, can you change this £50 note? Oh, no, we can't do that. I said, okay. If I get money out of ATM, is that okay? Yeah, no problem. So the ATM wouldn't give me 10s. It would only give me 20s. Oh, I said, oh God. So I got £40 out of the ATM, two 20s. And the woman, like, she's standing there behind the counter and the ATM's where you are. So she saw me take the money out. And I said, it won't give me 10s. Can you change it? No, I can't change it. I was like, why?
Yeah.
She's like, we're not allowed to change money. I was like, it's your money from your ATM. She went, well, if you buy something, I can give you the change. I said, I need 10s. I said, okay, can I have that chewing gum? She went, yeah, but if you give me that 20, I can't change the other 20 for two 10s. I was like,
Yes.
I was like, you're baffling me.
Yeah.
This is why you're working at Sainsbury's and you'll never see any of the world. She would not change the money. And even if so basically what I'd have to do is I would have to change that 20, put the two fives together, put the two 10s together and have the £9 and 50 pence in change.
It's a huge headache.
Yeah. No.
So if you relate that to a professional boxer, try and explain, this is that's this, the doctor's giving me no. If it doesn't fit in exactly the box you want it to fit it in, then you're not in it.
Yeah.
Period.
Wow.
Anyway, but I fought all over the world, and it's been good, And my only goal really was to fight in America. I saw Marvin Hagler fight Sugar Ray Leonard.
Yeah.
April 6, 1987, Caesar's Palace. And I just was like,
Jeez.
That's so cool.
That's an experience.
That would be
man,
insane.
I want to fight there. I mean, that was my goal in boxing. I want to win a title and fight there. So, I won a French title, IBO World Cruiserweight Championship. I fought at Caesars, upstate in Nevada, and I fought at the Universal Amphitheater in Los Angeles,
What's the atmosphere like, man? Like, what's it like?
Amazing, man. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. But, I grew up in Nottingham, lived in London for a few years, and as a kid for me, it's hard for you to imagine, because kids are so technologically advanced now and there's so much access to information and there's so much access to resources, quick access to resources. We didn't have that. I mean, if you can imagine a world with no mobile phones, no YouTube, no Instagram, no social media. I don't think we even had text messages till I was 20 plus. So if you imagine a world that's kind of, if you have a globalized mindset, you've got to physically go and explore that globalization. You can't just, like if you say I want to drive a Bentley, you can have a virtual Bentley experience online right now.
But it ain't the same as driving a Bentley.
Yeah.
Very, very little difference. Or you can just log into YouTube and just watch Bentleys all day and be like, oh, I'm there. I can visualize it. I can see it. I can believe it. I can receive it. It's all in front of you. But back then we didn't. So when I said to my friends at 20, 18, 19, whatever years old, I want to fight in America, they were like, how the hell are you going to get to America? How the hell are you going to do that? I said, I don't know, but I'm going to do it. Do you know what I mean? So people say to me, oh, but you didn't win that title. And my friend was like, why did you quit? You could have been 3-time world champion. Why didn't you do this? I said, dude, success is based on your original goals of success. So if you say to me today, Ted, I want to get married one day to a nice lady that gives me no stress, have 2 kids, and earn 200 grand a year. That's your life's vision of what success is. So imagine you marry an absolute bombshell that's just more than okay, and you have 3 kids, and you're earning 400 grand a year. You're now the happiest man on earth.
Yeah.
Because you've achieved your goals.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
But what about the guy that wants to earn 4 million a year? My goal is to earn 4 million a year, but he spends 10 years earning 3 million.
He wouldn't be happy.
What's his mindset going to be? So $3 million is not a little, it's not a small amount of money. But this is how powerful the human mind is. If you put yourself in a position of failure, regardless of how successful you are, in your mind, you've always failed.
Wow.
So for me, I had no other goal in boxing but to get out with my faculties intact. Because as a kid, Muhammad Ali was starting to show some degeneration.
Yep.
Of course, he's got Parkinson's, but in the 80s and 90s, no one knew what Parkinson's was. And people watching him didn't know what Parkinson's was. We just thought boxing's slowing this guy down.
Yeah.
So I thought, I love the sport of boxing. I love combat, but I don't want to be damaged mentally.
Yep.
So that was one goal. And the other goal was to fight in America. And the third kind of indirect goal was to win a title. So I did all three.
Yeah. So you're satisfied?
More than satisfied.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did it with, I did it with a fistful of dollars, my brain intact,
Yeah.
and I fought in America. And Muhammad Ali watched me fight in my last fight. He was
Wow.
in the arena watching his daughter.
That is unreal.
That's a dream.
What was winning a title like?
It was amazing, but I won a couple of small titles before I won, a world title. So I was kind of used to winning, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you win something that is unexpected, or if you win something that is like really almost unachievable in your mind, it becomes almost like an out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
But if you are training 10 years to be a pilot and then you fly a plane with passengers on it, it's fulfilling.
Yeah.
You've been flying a plane for a long time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So this is how it was for me. I'd been winning. I'd been good at boxing. I'd met great people. I'd traveled the world. I had, boxed with, with great boxers. I'd seen all the great fighters. I'd traveled to watch fights. And so when I got to a point where I was meeting people, when I got to a point when I was winning titles, like high level titles, it was kind of like you're expected to win. So the feeling was nice, but it wasn't like, it wasn't like an out of body experience.
Yeah.
It wasn't like meeting Michael Jackson in Caesar's Palace. It wasn't like that.
So you met Michael Jackson?
I did, yeah. I met Michael Jackson.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I did.
That's so cool.
Coincidentally, so me and my friend Bryson were walking through Caesar's, and literally we're walking inside undercover in Caesar's Palace, and Michael Jackson is just like literally walking down. He's got two guys with him. He's walking down. Then we feel this wave of people, and Michael Jackson like diverts into this store, and it's got like a little balcony. He goes upstairs. He's on the balcony, and within 15 seconds, there must be like 5,000 people there, all screaming, Michael, Michael. But literally, we were this close. He literally just walked straight past us.
Wow.
I said to my friend, I said, you were screaming, man. He's like, I wasn't screaming, man. I wasn't screaming. I said, man, you were screaming. I was screaming. It was so cool. It was
That is so cool. That's unreal.
Yeah. I can't even imagine like fighting on like a world stage with literally those sort of people.
What was having Muhammad Ali in the crowd like?
Well, it's amazing because I fought on the same night that Layla Ali fought, and coincidentally, it turned out to be my last fight. But as I was in the ring, it was my particular fight in the ring, Muhammad Ali starts walking down the stairs at the Universal Amphitheatre. It's a great old, not old, but it was quite new, but it's a great arena, famous for Elvis Presley playing there. It's in Universal Studios in Los Angeles. It was a great boxing venue. Every seat was a good seat. So I'm physically in the ring competing, and Muhammad Ali starts walking in, and the whole crowd turns to the stairs and chanting, Ali, Super Ali, Ali, and Muhammad Ali's waving his hand, and like me and my opponent like, wait a minute, that's Muhammad Ali. And he literally walks in the arena, man. He's watching the fight, And I had a moment with him afterwards because, I broke my right hand in that fight. And so I was trying to catch this guy with a left hook. And he saw that and was catching me with right hands. So my face was swollen. I had a bit of a contusion on this side after, and so I go in the dressing room. I go out into the car park afterwards to jump in my car. Muhammad Ali walks out the back, and me and him are together. And I said, and some guy's like holding a camera and filming. And I said, look, I said to his daughter that was with him, his other daughter, not Layla, because I knew Layla. I was like, can I speak to the champ? Go ahead. I was like, look, champ, I'm sorry, man. I'm normally pretty like you. And he's like, I said, but you just saw what happened. He's like, yeah, man. He said, that was a tough fight, And I was like, and I'm just verbal diarrhea. I don't know, just verbal diarrhea. And he's like, shh, you was a bad man.
Oh,
and he
that's
went,
cold.
and I was just like, that was probably a massive highlight of my career.
That is unreal.
Yeah.
That is unreal.
Yeah. Why coincidentally was that your last fight? Why was that your last fight?
Well, I hurt my hand, and at that time, I had been to Germany and spent a bit of time in Germany. Got to understand the business of boxing a bit better. Earned a little bit of cash. Bought a couple of properties, and I think at that point I just went to kind of flip one property or something, and I made more in that property than I did like in my whole year of fighting. And I was
Wow.
like, oh shit, this is good. So I kind of diverted my brain to, other kind of less damaging ways to make revenue, and it just, and it just turned out that, 2 months turned to 6. I had to wait for this to heal, and before I knew it, the years went by, and then I just said to myself, I was always confident that once I got out of boxing, I'd be out of boxing for good. So even though I carved out a 12-year career back in boxing, later commentating and working with Fox, it's pertinent to understand that, when I got out of boxing, I completely got out of boxing. I didn't go to any boxing gyms. I didn't really associate with my boxing friends. I completely removed the glue from my body because I saw so many people get drawn back into boxing. You know what I mean? And it's the world's largest and most proficient drug is boxing. Trust me. It's more addictive than anything you'll ever try, envisage, experience in your life. You know what I mean? And I cringe when I see people, reporters that have never fought a day in their life. Oh, why is that guy fighting? He's over the hill. He's past it. You don't understand the drive, the determination, the adrenaline, the passion that goes through the bones. And people just can't quit. You can't quit, And unless you are steadfast, I'll use the term intelligent, and you've got other things to draw you away from the sport, it is so addictive. And I 100% understand why people make comebacks and comebacks and comebacks so they can come back no more. There's no other feeling like it,
Wow.
I mean, I race sports motorbikes. I've had 4 Yamaha R1s. I had the BMW S1000 RR 0 to 100 in a couple of seconds, no problem. But even busting through at 250 kilometers an hour on a track, you still don't get the same buzz as going in a boxing ring.
Really?
No.
Wow.
It's close, but not that close. Yeah.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
Was it the first time you were fighting that guy in that gym? Was that when you fell in love with that feeling? Or is it at your first professional fight?
No. Sparring Mark McBain in the gym was when I understood that I could learn how to do this. You got to remember. So most boxers get into boxing quite young, and they get into boxing through fighting. I didn't get into boxing accidentally through fighting. So for example, like Muhammad Ali became a boxer because some guy was pushing him around, stole his bike. Mike Tyson became a boxer because someone tore the head off his pigeon.
That's
so
gnarly.
These people were put into fighting as a way to channel their aggression. That was never me.
Right.
I went there just to keep fit because the teachers were on strike. Yeah. So when I learned how to do this, and when Danny was training me, he was training me to say, I know you're a street fighter. It makes no difference. If you don't learn this skill and understand how to make this person how to capitalize from this person's mistakes, you're never going to be a good boxer. So boxing to me personally, was always a sport. For many years, it was nothing but a sport.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I approached it as a sportsman. And so this is why, I wasn't particularly an aggressive fighter. I was a boxer puncher. And when I met certain people, of course, you can see different aggressions through different people. But I was a sportsman in my brain.
And so you were never this addiction that you talk about, the boxing is, you never had that compared to some other people did, or you did.
Oh, don't misunderstand me. It became intravenous.
Okay.
After a while.
Yeah, so when was that moment that you almost became addicted to it?
Well,
If there is a moment.
I thought I was lucky enough to fight in big stadiums, Sydney Entertainment Centre. But when I fought in Germany, I fought at the Bremen Sportshalle, which is a big sports hall in Bremen. I was training in Germany with Darius Mikuchevsky, who was, 2 or 3 time light heavyweight champion of the world, undefeated for 47 fights or 48 fights. And he was very, very famous in Germany. Well, I was his chief sparring partner for many, many years. And I met many people in Germany, actually. I spent a couple of years in Hamburg. But he was training for one fight. I think he was training for maybe Tiozo or one of the other guys. And he brought in 4 sparring partners. One guy from France, another guy from England, me, and I think I was living in LA at the time, and another guy. So he knocked them all out. But I spent 2 months with him. And I was boxing 10 rounds with Darius Mikuchevsky. I was boxing 6 rounds Monday, Tuesday, 10 rounds Thursday, Friday for like a couple of months.
Wow.
So they loved me in Germany because, a lot of the athletes would go there, and we'd get paid X amount of dollars a week and we'd be housed and we could do our own thing. But a lot of the guys would lie in bed, chill out with girls, do different things. You know what I mean? So I would go there and I would participate. I would run with the fighters. I would train with the fighters. I was in Germany when Vladimir and Vitaly Klitschko was signed by Universal Box Promotion.
Wow.
I was there the day they were signed.
That's
so
cool.
I became pretty good friend with Vladimir Klitschko.
Wow.
Because I spent every day with him. And when I went back to actually Hamburg, I think 5 years ago, I went into Foot Locker and the same guy was working there.
No.
Yeah, from like 1996, 97. The same guy was working in the store. And I'm like, Pedgeman, you're here. He's like, Ted, where's Vladimir? Because we used to always go Foot Locker together. And it was amazing. So I've had, boxing gave me amazing experiences and I always appreciated it, and, I boxed Juan Carlos Gomez. I trained with him a lot when I was there. We did a lot of good things, but what boxing did was, it really defined my discipline.
Yeah.
And when a lot of the kids leaving school kind of didn't know what to do, jobs were scarce, things were quite difficult. Margaret Thatcher didn't help the medium to lower communities, and a lot of the blacks in England found themselves, out of the industrial race. I was flying around the world competing. I had something to wake up for every morning, go for a run, train for a fight. So boxing, I love and appreciate boxing because it really defined my life, gave me a focus like I've never had before, gave me something to do, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for me, I got nothing but positive to say about boxing.
Who was your toughest opponent then?
Well, I've had a few tough opponents going through, but I fought in Fiji and I fought a guy named Sione Taleoli, who was a Samoan. Samoans are tough. Right?
Yeah.
They got brick heads. So the reason that was tough is because I'd actually broke my finger. My finger was broken, and my trainer put cortisone in my finger. So if you can imagine, I could only do a fist like this. You know what I mean? But it was in a glove and wrapped up, and I managed to fight. I got through the fight. I won on points. And when I went to Fiji a few years back, the guy at immigration recognized me because there was only one TV channel there. We went there for 9 days, did the wide world of sports, spent the time in Fiji, and it was a kind of national event.
Wow.
The guy's like, oh, Ted Cofie. Oh, that's you. I was like, yeah. He said, oh, I was at the fight in the early 90s. I was like, yeah, that was me.
Wow.
So it was amazing. Yeah, it was a tough fight though, because I was kind of half missing it, right, and then this guy caught me, stunned me a bit, but I came through a 1 points, 12 rounds.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Well, what's it like when people recognize you around the world? Well, what's that like?
Look, it's great. I mean, I'm quite a humble guy. I mean, when I do things that are quite achievable, quite big, financially or otherwise, I always lay under the radar. You know what I mean? I come, like I say, I'm from immigrant parents. Don't get me wrong, it's different now.
Yeah.
Sons of immigrant parents now are happy to drive their Bentleys and flash it around everywhere. But back in the day, if you're the child of an immigrant, you're kind of told to chill out, lay back, respect the environment, respect the community, respect your teachers, respect society. And I grew up that way. And it really wasn't until about 10 years ago that I realized, screw this, I'm going to focus on the action and not the reaction.
Yeah.
So I say that, and I'll give you a really, really out of the ballpark example. A lot of people focused on a million blacks rioting around America a couple of years back, but that was the reaction to George Floyd being killed by a white cop. And for some reason, even with cameras on him, that cop thought it was okay to just sit on that guy's neck and kill him, and just, you know what I mean? So that's very extreme. I don't want to get political here, but my point is that there's a lot of things that as a young black kid in England, you're taught to just ignore, let it happen, and I'll just go around it. But I don't do that anymore.
What was that pivotal moment that made you switch to be like more action instead of reaction?
I had a really good business deal that I was doing in Hong Kong that was all signed, sealed, and delivered. And then the managing director of the company was like, oh, I'm leaving now, so I'm not doing the deal. And it was done. And it was hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in profit. The deal was done. The money had been spent. The product had been, evaluated. Distributors were in place. Everything was done. And, and I guess as a youngster, you'd be like, oh, okay. Okay, that's fine. Man, but I was like, no, mate. This is going to cause a reaction that's far greater than the issue. And your action is what's creating the problem. And, because I know that's a weird story. That was my pivotal moment. But, for example, someone has said to me before, this many years ago, oh, I don't really like black people, but, you're a nice guy. I'm like,
That is
Really?
outrageous.
That's
as a young guy in England in the 80s, you'd be like, okay, thank you. You know what I mean? But no, now I'm like, wait a minute, you realize I'm black, you an idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I try and focus on, the initial cause rather than the reaction I've related to the cause.
Yeah, and
helped
that's
me quite a lot.
Yeah, that's very what's the word? I don't know if professional is the right word, but you come across as a very professional and obviously humble guy as well.
Try my best.
And I'm sure professionalism is kind of why you kind of got into commentating, why maybe Fox wanted to work with you as well as your illustrious career. How did you get into commentating for Fox?
Well, it's a bit of a long story. Whether I should say it or not, I don't know. I contacted Fox once and just basically said, after watching a fight that was really, really, really poorly commentated, and just was like, I love the fight, but the commentary was awful. So I contacted one of the producers there. Long story short, I won't tell you the full story. I don't want to upset anybody. And I said, look, I can commentate. I used to box, and I haven't been in boxing in a long time. I briefly explained why I got out of boxing, and I wanted to remove all the glue. I didn't want to be involved. I didn't want to be the guy hanging around the gym making a comeback 20 times. So I just cut it.
Yeah.
But I'm loving boxing again. But I'd love to do it from this position. So he put me. He said, yeah, come and see me. I said, yeah, come and. He said, I'm going to give you a fight to commentate. I think it was Billy Dibb fighting in Japan against somebody. He said, oh, there was no commentary on it. He said, all right, can you commentate on this? And I sat in the studio for 12 rounds, just doing a play-by-play. And he's basically like, welcome to the team. And from there, I kind of got into the commentary circuit, And I just, and I respect it. And it was always kind of like a third party thing for me. A lot of people put their, heart, body, and soul into it and say, this is the only thing I'm going to do. But for me, it's not that I didn't want it to be the only thing I didn't want to do, but it was always something that I just enjoyed as a sideline. And that's kind of how I treated it, So I was always happy being like the expert analyst and letting, the hosts be the hosts. I wasn't trying to take over anybody's hosting job.
Yeah.
I thought, look, I know fighting, I know boxing, I know what I see when two people are going to fight, and boxing is measured in millimeters and milliseconds. So when you see a default, this can be the detriment of a fighter. I can see that. I've been watching it my whole life.
Yeah.
So this is why when people have come to me in Queensland and all over the country, I didn't used to watch boxing, but when you commentate, I understand. Like you just make it make sense. And I'm like, well, because I'm speaking from a layman's point of view. I'm not trying to speak like a professional boxer. I'm speaking like this is what happens when that person does this. If he keeps dropping his left hand, that person's gonna wait for him to make that mistake with a jab and come over with the right hand. Boom, and it happens.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that's where the commentary comes from. Yeah.
What's your favorite fight that you've ever commentated, do you think?
Favorite fight I've ever commentated. I don't know, man. I've commentated a few. Tim Tszyu, Jeff Horn was quite good.
Yeah, I was gonna, because I knew that one, and I was like, I reckon that might be the favorite because that's a cool fight.
Yeah, because it was me, there was Jeff Fennick, there was Ben Damon, and at the time, Jeff Horn had fought Manny Pacquiao and beat him, and Jeff was like, oh, Tim doesn't have the experience, but I was an early adopter of Tim Tszyu, and I'll tell you why. I know Costa Tszyu, his dad, quite well. I was involved when they opened the gym in Cogra together. He asked me to be there, so myself, Igor, Costa, we were all there. And the best way to success, they say, is visualization.
Yeah.
Right? If you can see it and believe it, you'll receive it. But when you look at Tim Tszyu, he actually sat on the shoulders of the man that went out and achieved it. So when his dad was fighting for the title, Tim was there in Vegas, smelling the smell, listening to the noise, seeing the victory. So he's not only believed it to receive it, he's actually lived it.
Yeah.
So when you've been in them really high level positions, and then you go back to recall that high level capability in yourself, it's often done quite naturally. So I instantly in that fight, I said, Tim's going to win this fight because he's too correct and he's been there. And so I kind of knew he was going to do well in the sport of boxing, I'm not massive on social media. I've got to start getting big on social media.
We'll tag you and everything.
Maybe this will be a platform. But if I was, then everyone would have known. The people that know me well already know that would have known that I was an early adopter of people like Tim Tszyu because he's got good boxing fundamentals. And really, if you've got that, then you're gonna do well in the sport.
I also think, like, considering the last fight that he had with
Fondora.
Yeah, Fondora.
Yeah.
I watched the last 6 rounds of that fight, and I think that taking that fight on what was it, like 12 days notice or 10 days. I don't know how long it was, 2 weeks. I don't know, but taking that against a guy that's like 6 inches taller, 7 inches taller than you is. I think that shows a lot of where his mind and his heart towards boxing is. Not from a fundamental point of view, and I think that that's just. It was unreal to watch, and like it was a bloodbath, that fight.
Well, it was a monumental effort, and you can't cry over spilt milk because what's happened's happened. But if it was me being in that fight, I would have stopped the fight because he had he had a massive gash across his head, and it was going into his eyes. And
it did affect it.
If he wasn't as talented as he was, he would have got knocked out. But he was able to use his natural instincts, not panic, and go through the fight. For that, it's commendable. And he'll probably get a lot of stars for doing that. But he's not the champion. Yeah. Had the fight been stopped by the corner before 4 rounds, it would have been a no contest. That means the fight would have had no result. He'd have gone back with his belt. And then he can have a rematch in 3, 6, 12 months or whatever. But now he's beltless. But he may not care because he's probably thinking, well, I'm beltless, but I'm going to win back all the belts anyway, and I'll be 2-time world champion. But,
I think it's upped his stock a lot, like taking that fight in the heart. I think that I could be wrong. You're the expert here, so I don't want to
No,
speak
you're
out of
right,
place.
you're
But I
right.
think it's up to his stock a bit more in terms of taking a bigger fight on that short notice and fighting through that.
Yeah.
I think that's up to his stock a bit more. And I don't know that he'll get the rematch, but I don't know about the contracts, whether it's a
Yeah.
rematch clause or if so. But I think he can win if that cut doesn't happen.
100%. I mean, he was winning comfortably in the
Yeah.
first 2 rounds. And look, your opinion is important, right? Because you're the general public.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
opinions were all based on expert opinions, there would be no live sports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The general public dictates what happens to a sportsman. And if people say that's up to stock, he's very courageous, that was brilliant, then I guess it was the right thing to do. Because when he fights again, more people are going to watch. And that's
Yeah.
all that matters. I mean, because a lot of people in their set professions get in free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not paying pundits. So you want to really attract the general population to come and watch what's happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really, really good that he did that.
What do you think about the current boxing landscape at the moment? What do you
I
think?
think the boxing landscape is very, very good. It went for a bit of a lull, but we've got the Saudis paying attention.
They're paying money
They're
as
paying
well.
money and they're paying attention to the
Yeah.
sport of boxing, and that's really critical. Obviously, social media, television media, and the way that the world is being brought together so easily is really helping boxing, especially remote areas like Australia. There are boxers in South America and other places that DAZN and other organizations are bringing together to make these guys seen around the world. So for that, it's amazing. I think if you're going to get into boxing, it's a great time to get into boxing.
And I don't know if you've seen much of like the influencer boxing kind
Yeah.
of scene. What do you think of
I
that?
love it, man.
You love
Really?
it?
I love it.
Okay.
Absolutely love it. I know people are going to say, "Oh, that's ridiculous. You're a professional boxer. Why would you love it?" I love it. I loved it when Paul Allen first fought. I thought it was amazing. I love anything that brings ours into the sport because ours is money.
Yeah, of course.
And
Okay.
in
Smart.
in business, or in news, bad news is better than no news.
Absolutely.
Because if you're not seen, it's like a lack of marketing. I mean, so suddenly you got Paul Gallen and you got all this demographic of people watching boxing that wouldn't have watched before. You got Jake Paul with 30 million followers across his YouTube and different
Yeah.
channels. So now you've got, and when he does a show at the O2, so here's what happens historically with a boxing show, whether it be Las Vegas, whether it be London, whether it be Los Angeles, you will normally have a time slot. So it'll say doors open 6 p.m. Main event scheduled for 10 p.m. Everyone will rock at 8:30, 9 o'clock. That's the cool thing to do when you go to a boxing show. When you go to the O2 to watch a show with Jake Paul, the whole arena is full at 6 o'clock on the dot.
Wow.
Every single fight is full.
Huh.
So suddenly you got this demographic of, 15-year-old girls, 20-year-old guys, mums, dads, aunties, uncles. It's just changed the landscape completely. And Amanda Serrano, who is a very good female boxer that Jake Paul took under her wing. I think her highest purse in 40 odd fights was like, 50 or 60 grand. I mean, please don't quote me. It could have been 100. But she's making like millions of dollars with Jake Paul. Like millions. What she deserves. So like we can all sit here on the outside and say, "Oh, influencer boxing's terrible and you're making boxing look bad." Dude, close your eyes if you don't want to watch. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
it's
it is what it is, right? Like, if I'm gonna suddenly turn around at my age and say, "Hey, I want to race cars and go on, and be a car racer," I'm very different to Lewis Hamilton, who's been the pinnacle racer for all his life. If you want to watch me race, you gotta expect what you're gonna get, right?
Yeah.
And you say, "Well, I'll take it or I won't." And that's how I look at influencer boxing. It's interesting. Every fight's entertaining because no one's trying to be tactically fantastic. No one's trying to create a minimum edge and be the best. They're just
Scrapping.
Just fighting.
they're just robots who just go and just swing and hope for the best. And it's myself, I love it, man. I think it's great for sport. I think it's great for entertainment, and I think it's really good. The only bad side of it, if I have to pull out a negative, is that if you've not been used to being hit in the face or you've not had a concussion, or you've not been punched or something, it can be quite dangerous if you get someone that's quite a good standard and someone that's low standard,
Yeah.
and they catch them with some heavy punches to the head,
Mm.
because people that are not being used to hit, you hear people tripping over, banging their head, and they have, they go into a coma.
Yeah.
So this is the only thing. That's the only thing I can say,
It's a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
because I've not been used to.
So what do you think about Jake Paul fighting Mike Tyson then? What's your thoughts on that?
Whether I like it or don't like it, it's gonna be the highest. It's gonna be the fight with the most views on the planet.
Yeah,
Netflix
100%.
have taken it on.
Yeah, which is
So,
insane.
I mean,
And everyone wants to watch Mike Tyson fight again.
it's
As well.
it's gonna break all records, and I think it's brilliant. I think it's a great move. I think that Mike Tyson makes a bit of easy money. I think that Jake Paul is at a good age to fight someone like Mike Tyson at his age. I think if he cracks him, he'll still hurt Jake Paul. But I think it's a brilliant matchup. Everyone's saying, "Oh, how can you get a guy out of retirement? He's 58 years old." He's 58 years old, but he was the most fearsome fighter on God's planet. He's not a regular 58 years old.
Yeah, yeah,
But at the same
100%.
time, Jake Paul's a fit guy. He's got a lot of professionals around him. Eats well, got plenty of money. So it's a good matchup. Why not?
What are you picking? You picking like knockout or
I wouldn't embarrass myself enough to pick anybody.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough.
I'm just gonna watch and just enjoy the event. I'm not gonna be like, yeah, Tyson's gonna win. I don't even think there's gonna be a result. I think it's just gonna be an exhibition stroke fight, and they'll probably raise both hands at the end and job done. I don't think any officiating body would sanction it as an actual fight.
I heard that they were looking into sanctioning the fight, but I don't think it would. I don't think it would be passed. But
Well, anything can happen with a hot dollar, but
True.
I don't
Absolutely,
know.
yeah.
I don't know if Tyson hasn't fought for God knows how long, so I don't know
Yeah,
if they would sanction it.
yeah, I'd be keen to switch gears a bit because
Sure.
people, I don't know. I was talking to Chantel and she said people often underestimate how actually smart and switched on you are. So I want to kind of move along the timeline a bit
do
more
it.
and
Let's
go
do it.
into the business. Talk about moving into business and getting your MBA.
Sure.
And what that was like for you.
Well, academia was always indoctrinated in me. Again, son of immigrants.
Yeah.
And African immigrants, we have a lot of smart Africans. We did a lot with aviation, aerospace, medical. My mum was like, "You're the last born, you have to be a doctor." So in my brain, it was always getting education. I was a great sportsman, so education wasn't super important. It wasn't the priority for me. But obviously, I was made to read quite a lot of books. I was made to understand things, not from a business perspective, but just from a general knowledge perspective, and just to be smart in school, English, literature, maths more than anything. So I always thought, maybe one day I'll be a doctor. And then when I was actually boxing, I was actually a champion, Australasian, Pan Pacific, or some kind of champion, and I took a course and I did business management just at TAFE, and I absolutely loved it. It just made sense, it taught me a little bit about finance, taught me a bit about systems, processes, and business. This is amazing, I thought. And then I watched this show on 60 Minutes when I was back in America, and it spoke about this. There was a black guy actually. He was working for the Lehman Brothers at the time. That was a massive private equity company in the USA. Like when I say massive, I mean massive. I mean these guys they've got billions of dollars under fund management, and they're turning over billions a week.
Yeah.
So this guy was in Lehman's earning $1 million a month.
Wow. A
And it was
million a
the-
month is
$1
crazy.
million a month.
Wow.
Consulting fee. And he was there for 15 months or something. And the interview was like, "How did you get that gig?" I said, "Oh, I got an MBA." And I thought, "What's an MBA? Like, what is this?" So I started to understand and study it and learn about it. I was like, "Oh wow!" So this is the qualification that allows people to be CEOs. And back then, like 90% of CEOs had an MBA, and I always wanted to do it. And at one point, I just had like a stack full of cash and a bit of time on my hands, and I went to this MBA Open Day, Australian Institute of Business, and I just paid the whole course and said, "Okay, I'll do it."
Do it, yeah.
And then I went through it. But I got 3 distinctions throughout. I got a C average because I was working and I was doing studying as well. But little did I know that a lot of executives love the C average people because it means that you're it means that you've actually had to fight to learn and overcome and overpower some of the things that you need to learn. You know, people that are not in the real world, that can study all day, sleep, study, have a great time, plenty of money, they all get A's, but it's not realistic to what's going to happen in the real world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's weird because maths is the major prerequisite of the MBA, and I failed my first maths exam.
Wow.
We have to do an assignment and an exam for each subject. I failed it because I was managing somebody out of my business when I worked at Canon at the time and I was doing my MBA. And so because I didn't study and I thought, this is maths, I'm brilliant at maths, I'm going to do it easy. I didn't study. But if you don't study for an MBA, you're going to fail.
Yeah.
Regardless of who you are and how good you are. And so I rang my professor and I'm like, oh man, I'm sorry, I'm working, I did this. He said, look, Ted, don't worry. He says, education is 25% knowledge and 75% persistence. You continue, you will be okay. I said, oh, thanks, professor. I went back and studied really hard. I passed that. I didn't get a distinction in that, but I got a distinction in international business, which was globalization of enterprise.
Wow.
In leadership. And operations process management. So in leadership, I tore my Achilles tendon.
Oh.
The day I was going to do my exam, I tore my Achilles tendon. My wife's a nurse. So I'm playing, again, I'm at Canon, I'm playing indoor soccer. And my friend's like, oh, come on, Ted, let's play. I said, look, I got a meeting at 1, then I got an exam at 4:30. I can't play. Come on, just play off a run, go. So it's amazing. It's amazing how life works because, so the ball comes to me, it goes out for a throw-in. I say to the guy, okay, sub me off. I got to go. It's 12 o'clock. I've got like a meeting at 1 o'clock. I got to shower and go. He's like, oh, come on, just 5 more minutes. So the ball comes to me from the throw-in. I collect the ball on my chest, drop it to my foot. I parry one way and go the other. Pop, my Achilles tendon goes. I'm like,
that's brutal.
I literally thought someone had shot me in the leg. I'd been an athlete my whole life, but I didn't know what an Achilles tendon injury was. I'd never experienced it. I didn't know anyone that had done it. So my foot was just boom flopping like that. I was like, what's happened to me? You know what I mean? So one of the girls, Gabrielle, she came up and said, oh, you okay? She put my arm around her. She walked me to the car because it was a mixed AstroTurf football game, soccer game. So I went to my car. I drove with my left foot to my physio, who did the test for the Achilles tendon, where you put your knee on a bench and they tap your calf and it's no movement.
Yeah.
He said, yeah, you got to go to hospital. Your tendon's gone. So I drove to my house, had a shower, called my wife, who was at work. I said, look, I'm coming to hospital. I've torn my Achilles tendon. Sure, should I call an ambulance? I said, no, don't worry. I had a shower, got in a taxi, hobbled into hospital myself. She got me in to see a top surgeon because, she's a nurse.
Yeah.
A top nurse. And the surgeon's like, okay, we've got to operate. I was like, look, I've been studying for 2 months this exam. I got this exam. I got to be there at 4:30. This was like 3 o'clock at this point.
Oh.
So I rang the university. I said, look, I've hurt my leg. I'm going to come anyway. Can you please set some space aside for me? I said, yeah, no problem. I said to the doctor, can I just get some painkillers? I got all this stuff in my head. I can't miss this exam.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we'll give you some Panadine 4 and we'll give you this and that. Go and do the exam and come back. So I got in a cab in pain, went to the adjudication facility, put my leg on this thing, did my exam, got a distinction, went back.
Wow. That's kind of a cool story though.
Oh man.
I didn't fail. So the point of that whole thing is that, if you've got a goal in life, it don't matter how short-term, medium-term, long-term, where the goal is, if you focus on the goal, what happens in between doesn't matter. It's noise. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Your strategy, your tactics can change, but if you're really desperate to reach the goal, you'll reach the goal. And my goal was to get that exam, to do that leadership. I had to do that leadership exam.
Wow. And so we haven't mentioned it yet, but you're the CEO of Nyko Management. How did you start Nyko Management?
Well, Nyko Management was kind of born from frustration, really.
Wow,
really?
It really was, because I, in the years where youngsters would have probably got into business, worked their crappy sales jobs and got up to management, I was a professional boxer. So I didn't get into I didn't get into the corporate world per se till late 20s or 30s.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
wow.
started to fight less, mix it between work and sport. So I noticed, I couldn't, like, if you stay in the same job, you might get a pay increase, but you get 3%, 4%. You probably can't move up to management. When you start in a certain position, it's very hard to move. So I would have to zip jobs. And what that taught me was I was able to, capture information very quickly by going into an environment, learning quickly. I would go, I would go into an environment where I knew nothing about the product, the structure, the systems, but I was good at managing people. So I'd have to befriend. I would have staff reporting to me that had more knowledge than me about the product.
Wow.
So I would have to manage them, but ask them to train me.
Yeah. Wow.
It's weird, but I was able to do it very, very well. So I walked my way up the ladder and pretty much got to the top. General manager of sales. Reporting into Japan, doing different things, doing high levels, managing separate business units, understanding profit and loss sheets, understanding operations, processes, inflows, outflows, systems, Excel, spreadsheets, forecast targets, all the things you need in a business to manage it well and efficiently. I was able to do. But on top of that, really, my niche was being able to manage people and drive high sales outcomes.
Wow.
So I knew from a young age as a professional boxer that if you can sell yourself or market yourself correctly, you become more valuable. And so I was able to go into situations, evaluate the situation, create a target or promise around the situation and deliver. Sometimes I didn't deliver and I got fired. So if you've never been fired in sales, you've never really tried hard in sales, put it that way. So, you go in, you give an aggressive pitch to your management team, say, yep, I can collect that $2 million. I know I can do it. I'm going to do this, and we'll have $2 million. And it doesn't happen. So, okay, you're gone. But it did happen to me a few times, and that got me, wow, this guy's done it. You know what I mean? So it taught me really the MBA was, I got to middle management, and I was kind of locked there. And I thought, I need this validation. I need the letters behind my name. And that's going to validate me. But as I was doing the MBA and I was going through, marketing, mathematics, leadership, globalization of enterprise, all the different things I'm learning as I'm going through, I'm like, this is amazing. This is not something you can be taught. Sorry, this is not something you can accidentally trip over.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something like mathematics. It's very, very specific. The specificity is so precise. And like 7 times 7 will always be 49.
Yeah,
It'll never
exactly.
be 47. It'll never be, it's mathematics is exact. It's never maybe this or maybe that. And this is what I found about a lot of the process structures and systems, sales frameworks, and all the things that were required in business. This MBA kind of forced it down your throat and said, this is what happens in this scenario. And so I found that to be, very, very important. And so when I was in corporate organizations, I saw quite a lot of holes, especially large corporate organizations where you got 400 or 500 staff, and if, 400 or 500 staff,
It's a lot of people.
it's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And if 10% of those aren't performing, it's very hard to see with large numbers. If 40 people aren't performing out of 400, you can't really see it. Or you can't see it for a while. Do you know what I mean?
So how do you pick that up then? How do you pick up the 10% that aren't performing?
I should sell this, but anyway.
Sorry.
Well, what you can do is create satellite businesses or silos. And this is what I did with some of my teams. I broke the teams down. When I went to my last job, I was something through distribution, maybe 200 people indirectly reported to me. I said, I can't manage that many people. You never talk to that many people, you can never see them. So you put in a line of management that can manage a small amounts of people. So if you're managing 10 people in a satellite system and one person is slacking or one person takes 6 days off every 3 weeks, you can see that. There's only 8 or 9 people around.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you can manage small issues very diligently with small numbers. As soon as you get an office building with 7 floors and 2,000 people,
You ain't seeing everyone.
you know what I mean? And this is where you get a lot of wastage. And now that's okay if you're $1 trillion Apple.
Yeah.
You can afford a bit of wastage and probably save you a bit of tax if you do have wastage. But in small businesses where profit and working capital is critical and you got, some fixed costs, those fixed costs, generally employees, if those employees aren't performing, you kind of throw money in the bin.
Yeah.
So, you just break it all down into bite-sized pieces, and
Yeah.
you can kind of see it.
And so, what's your actual role? Are you a consultant going into these businesses, or what is your role?
Yeah, I consult and evaluate.
Yeah.
When I do those types of works, I consult and evaluate. I also do quite a lot of brokerage.
Yep.
So if people need something, they might approach me and say, Ted, we need to build a bridge.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I've ever built a bridge, but they say like Ted needs to build a bridge. So I'll say, no problem. So this person, I'll say that bridge is going to cost you $1 million. So I will then source bridge engineers, architects, surveyors, get CAD reports, show the sample of the bridge, and I'll create a team to build the bridge.
Wow.
This is
Right.
this is brokerage and consulting, right?
Yeah.
And I'll create a report that says X on that bridge. So this is one part of what I do. Another part, if you go into an organization, is, and I've worked directly with organizations where you would look at the books of an organization, what's called a profit and loss sheet or a balance sheet,
Yeah.
and you'll see where there's any leakage. For example, if people owe you money, that's one of the key things.
Yeah.
How do you manage tracking that money? What systems do you have in place to ensure people pay? So I went into a company once where, they had like over $500,000 in monies owing by 10 different clients. I
Jeez.
was like, how are you getting the money back? Oh, we're just asking them every week. What are they saying? Oh, they'll pay next week. I was like, all right, create a direct debit system where all your customers are on a direct debit.
What's a direct debit
A
system?
direct debit means that you sign that this person can take money out of your bank account. So if you're
okay.
going to buy a phone from me on direct debit, that means at the end of each month, I will debit $90 out of your account.
Oh, so it's like what a gym does with a membership.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you do that in a business.
Yeah. You sign that.
Yeah,
sign the
yeah,
You
of
contract.
course.
you sign that, and then they can take the money.
Yeah.
So we created some systems, processes, and structure to be able to take the money, because you're creating a service, and it's a subscription service where you will, where you're selling, an ISP or you're doing something, and then you want to create the money on an ongoing basis. You don't want to say, here's a bill, and we'll just let it go for 6 months and hope for the best.
Yeah.
So there's all these little structures and things we do in business to make things more efficient. Also, when it comes to sales, a lot of people create massive sales teams, pay big money to sales teams, but the sales teams aren't delivering.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got a team of 10 salespeople all on 100 grand, there's $1 million a year you're spending before you've earned anything.
Yeah.
So now you need the salary of a salesperson to represent the revenue they're bringing into the company. Often so as the CEO, 5%. I want to earn 5% of what I'm bringing into a company. That's, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
so if I'm on 50 grand, I bring in $1 million.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's it's super interesting because we well, obviously it's still pretty young, and so we're trying to get. We actually interviewed yesterday a businessman named JT Fox, an entrepreneur, and so we're trying to interview a lot more people that are much more business savvy. And so you obviously coming from a boxing and a sport world, it's very different to a business world. Do you think it's important? And this might be an obvious question, but why do you think it's important for people to set themselves up in business coming out of those industries?
Well, business gives you some precise disciplines. You get discipline through sport, of course, because you got to wake up each day. You got to repeat the same things you're doing. And, perfection is basically the affliction of repeat application. Repeat application creates perfection. I know a gentleman that used to be a pilot for Qantas, and he came here as a £10 pom, I think, in the 60s or something like that. And he worked for Qantas for like 2 years. He was in the Royal Air Force in England fighting F-50 bombers or something like.
Yeah,
Mach
wow.
2.
Yeah, like
And he
real.
said, I've never been so bored in my life. I couldn't fly. I couldn't fly a 707. I can't do it. I was bored. I mean, God, he would sit there, autopilot. He said, I couldn't do it. I did it 2 years, I left. So my point is that people will always say to me, oh, what's it like to be a professional athlete? I said, people always complain about boredom. Oh, I do that every day. What after? You want to be bored? Be a professional athlete.
Huh.
Yeah.
You got to run every day. Same thing. Get up, do the same thing 2 or 3 times a day. Perfect the jab. You know what I mean? 1, 2, straight lines, slip the punch, jab, skip. Everything every day. Run. I mean, I heard Ronaldo still does 1,000 straight kicks a day. Straight to goal. Straight to goal. Bruce Lee said the most direct action to success is the straight 1-2 punch. Unless you can create a foundation and build a foundation, everything else that looks flashy around it will all fall apart if the foundation is not strong. You got to keep the simplicity. So what business will do is give you foundation. It'll help you understand finance and revenue. I think. See, my kids know what my younger daughters, not Chantel, they know what a P&L is.
I don't even know what a P&L is.
Profit and loss sheet. So I'll give you an example.
Balance sheet.
Right.
I'll give you an example. Different to a balance sheet, but a type of balance sheet.
Right.
I'll give you an example. So my kids wanted to do a lemonade stand. Right?
Yep.
So we say, okay. First of all, what is it gonna cost? What's your cost of goods? Right? Lemons cost this. Okay? So let's just estimate what you want to earn. You want to earn $100? Yeah. What's your cost of goods? Okay? Cost of goods is $50. We're gonna make $150 left. Remove all your expenses. So cups.
Like a $10 for a big stack or something. Yeah.
So cups. Then you've got sugar. Then you got me driving to the shop and buying you the lemons. That's a cost. Might cost $3 by the time you petrol and whatever. So we put all the costs in. We come to a net profit. And then there's your net profit.
Yeah.
And then so your net profit, if you net $50 this, $25 expenses, you got $25. So if you make $100, you got to give us $25. Oh, that's not fair. How are you going to create your lemonade stand if you don't buy your products? You don't keep all of the money. You got to pay back what you've used to create the lemonade stand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we did a break-even system on the profit and loss sheet, and they needed $82 or something, because we got quite a lot of lemons, and I added it all up, did it all.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, you're not making any money until you make $82. If you make $42, you owe us this much money. Oh, Dad, that's not fair. Go and make your money. They made like $190 from the end.
Wow.
So Mum did a Facebook post. Boom, we got all the neighbors coming in. I said, girls, listen, if you want to give anything away, so they made chocolate brownies, they made little cookies, they made lemonade, they put it all on the table outside our backyard. I said, if you want to give away anything, so if you want to give one of your friends an extra piece of brownie or an extra biscuit, you make sure you've made your $92 or $82 first, because then you're in profit.
Yeah.
You don't give away anything until you've made your money back. Oh, okay, Dad. So everyone, they're being diligent, counting the money. Boom, boom. They made, Dad, we made $80. One more sale and you've done this. They made it. And then from there, I was like, okay,
make the brownie, make the cookie. Yeah.
And so $180 something. So
Wow.
a machine, you know what I mean? And so I'm always giving them like very small maths equations, just so that they can understand that maths is important more than the fact that, oh, you go to school and do a maths equation. Oh, why do we do fractions? Fractions are ridiculous. No, fractions aren't ridiculous. If you understand the utilization of fractions in everyday society, then fractions are important. But what happens in schools nowadays is people are told what to do, not told why they have to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, being an astronaut is a mathematical equation.
Yeah.
It's a 100% mathematical equation. There's no other factor. Of course, you've got to be fit. Of course, you've got to have a machine. But this is why you have 3 people in the space station, and you have 103 people in a control tower, all evaluating the sums.
Yeah.
The wind, measured by speed and time, it's numbers. The distance, the trajectory, piercing the Earth's atmosphere. How long are you going to get there? Removing the power forces off the side of the jet or whatever.
Yeah.
So all these are mathematical equations. So a pilot or an astronaut doesn't just wake up and hope for the best. If all the numbers don't match to the millisecond, millimeter, millidistance, you don't take off.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
wind has to be correct. The timing has to be correct. You count down. This is why they count. So we only hear the 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, but these guys are counting down from 300 above.
Yeah, of course.
They're counting 300, 299, 298, 297, 96, 95, and they're evaluating. Is everything still the same? Yep, okay, so if everything's still the same, we're going to go now in 240 seconds. Everything's still the same? Boom, 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 boom. Okay, guys, it looks like everything's remaining the same. The wind is still good. The time is still good. It'll take you 7 minutes to get there. You'll have this much oxygen, this much air, this much time. Boom, boom. Yep, all maths, all maths, all maths.
Yeah.
Go.
Go. Yep.
You know what I mean? It's all a mathematical equation.
Yeah.
And if you look at how a scientist writes his, approach to space, it's all maths. Okay, boom, that's how I got to space. And so this is how important general mathematics is to life. We're all using it. We're all measured by maths. We're all numbers in a system. Your height, your speed, your distance, your house, all numbers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's what I mean. So I was hit and run by a car when I was 7 years old.
Oh,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, some guy came across the road, knocked me off my bike and took off.
Jeez, man.
Yeah. My mom took me to the police station, and the cop was like,
Yeah.
do you know what the registration plate was? I was like, what's a registration? I didn't even know what a registration plate was. He's like, well, what colour was the car? I said, it was a black car. Like, well, you've just described a million cars in England. We can't help you. So after that, my brain I learned registration plates and numbers. I remembered everything. You know what I mean? I couldn't get numbers out of my head as a kid because I was always trying to find the number plate. And my dad bought a new car when I was 11. I still know the number plate.
Huh.
Wow.
Yeah, I recorded. I know. When I was 11, he brought a car. When I was 15, he brought another car. I know the number plates. I know my brother's first car when I was 9 years old. I remember the number plate. Yeah, complete photographic memory. So it's obviously helped me in maths.
Wow.
But yeah, everything is a mathematical equation.
Wow.
Yeah, that is something else. You also do athlete managing as well at Nico? No?
Yeah.
Yeah?
To a limited effect. I've tried to work with some athletes and help them in different directions. We became a soccer intermediary. I've helped some of the guys out of Africa get into England and Holland and different places.
Okay.
And we never went into that strongly, but it was always an idea that we wanted to do.
Right.
We tried early on to create like a transitions program to help people transition from professional sports into life or business. See, this is very, very difficult for people to do this because, when you've fought on a stage or competed at high level, you've earned a bit of money, it's hard to come back to reality and be humble. It's hard. I mean, you're like, no, I'm not sweeping the floor. I'm not wiping that. I'm not working 8 hours a day. But the reality is, life goes on, man. You've got to make the best out of the situation, And for me, academia was drummed into me from my parents. So for me, it was always like, okay, I got to be humble by sitting in a university room and learning how to do exams when, all my friends have done it. Well, the friends that studied did it in their 20s and I'm doing it in my late 30s, 40s.
Yeah.
But, different reasons, different things create a bit of humble pie. But if you go through that goal and the pain, you'll come out the other end. You know what I mean? If you've earned money doing something, you've spent it, there's no shame or blame in doing something different and creating a new life and revenue stream for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
What is I'm sure everyone's had knockdowns in their lives and kickbacks and setbacks. Is there a memorable setback throughout your career, personal life, anything like that? Is there a setback that you really had to figure out a strategy to overcome, and what did that look like?
Went through a divorce.
Wow.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was very, very difficult, very painful. Went back to England, like 30 years old, no money. in debt to a lawyer, a divorced lawyer.
Jeez.
But within 16 months, I walked into a car yard, bought a brand new car, had 2 properties, and was starting to rebuild my life. You know, just one of my friends gave me £200. My brother gave me £200. I bought a car for £250. A bit of a shitbox, but it was all one colour. Cleaned it up, washed it every day. Drove around England, went to 50 interviews, got a job, started from scratch. After that first job, I thought I've got to stay in a job for a year if anyone take me seriously. After a year, I got another job, doubled my wage, and then I went to an investment seminar about property, learned how to buy a property with little money down, bought a property, bought a second one, boom, and I was on my feet. So, I mean, that is a 2 or 3 year story.
Yeah.
You know,
you rebuilt your life
bought
though.
into rebuilt your life. But you know, when you've gone through situations where you've had to make quick changes and utilize applicate things like learn boxing, learn business, learn stud. It helps you to regenerate very quickly. Like, I'm quite a positive person, you know, and I have quite an entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah.
And if you have that filled with doubt at some point. Of course, you always
Yeah.
doubt yourself.
100%.
The key is not to hold on to that doubt. I mean, overcome the doubt and move forward anyway. And this is, you know, what I like to do in many facets in my life. If people treat me nice, look me in the eye and are nice to me, I'm nice back. And in the background, I do my thing and just keep building and keep building and keep building.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. And how have you kind of juggled your personal family life with business and boxing? How has that landscape been?
Right now? Or throughout the time?
Throughout the time.
I guess I just try and be attentive and try and be, you know, respectful of people around me. I'm a Libran, right?
Yeah.
So we're known to be quite well balanced with scales. We're always striving for perfection. But at the same time, we're the only star sign that is represented by an inanimate object. An inanimate object is something that doesn't have a heartbeat, right? Everything else has a heartbeat. Scales don't have a heartbeat. So we can make decisions without emotion.
That's probably quite a good thing for business.
Yeah.
So exactly. I mean, so you know, I learned, like, I do take some things personally, but I can overcome things very quickly if they're personal.
Yeah.
I stick to the facts, you know, and I guess I make, you know, them very balanced decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, oh man, I just can't imagine rebuilding your life.
Yeah.
Like I know for me, because I just did 6 months overseas, went to America, went to Canada, raced World Cups, like wanted to do it since I was 15, made it happen.
Incredible.
Yeah, and I came back and I was like felt lost because it felt like the end of a movie. Now I have to go back to work a job, have to save up again to go make it happen again. Like I just can't fathom rebuilding your life because I feel like that's how I do it. And man, I just don't know how you did it, but
Yeah.
it's amazing how you did. And man, I got to thank you. Like the perspective you've brought to me and the things you said have helped me so much.
Yeah.
Like I really appreciate it, man.
No problem. No problem at all. I'll finish on one final point. So when I was 19 and I was in between training and I was doing all these things and I wanted to travel, I worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah.
I was earning £90 a week. I was the
wow.
happiest employee on the planet. And people are like, "You working at Kentucky Fried Chicken? Why the hell are you always so happy? Singing, going to work on time, you're happy." You know why? Because that £90 a week gave me the opportunity to go and visit all the gyms in London, to save up to go overseas, to do all the things I wanted to do. So I wasn't looking at the job. So if you come back and you're looking at a job, let's say you want to be the world's best podcaster. I don't know what your goals are, but let's say you want to be the world's best. And by being the world's best podcaster, it means that you start to, you know, interview Warren Buffett. You might interview the CEO of Apple. You might do all these things that's going to bring you millions of dollars. What that job is doing is creating freedom for you to buy a new microphone.
Yeah, exactly.
Freedom for you to be able to enjoy your weekends. Freedom that if you get somebody that's an executive in Melbourne, like a top executive that doesn't do anything on their own dollar, that means you can pay for their airfare to come from Melbourne to here.
Yeah.
So that you can pick up $10,000 off publishing your podcast. So my point is that if you manage your goals, the in-betweens won't make a difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Man.
You're not going to spend your life at your job.
Wow.
But you need your job to motivate and present your life to the world.
Wow.
Absolutely.
That's a good way to think about it. That's probably a perspective that we haven't really.
Yeah, that's
I haven't thought of it.
it's amazing.
There's nothing wrong with goals as long as they're somewhat realistic
Yeah.
and you're striving towards them goals. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with doing anything in between. I've had crappy jobs in between things that have made me very happy because it creates the next step on the ladder for you to go from A to B.
Yes.
That's it.
It's a stepping stone, isn't it?
That's it.
As a closing tradition on our podcast, we generally ask each guest the same question.
Sure.
And so, as the final question, your whole life, all the experiences you've had, what is the number one lesson you've learned?
Number one lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can take a minute to think about it.
Oh, don't need to take a minute. Number one lesson is be positive, man. You know what I mean? Have
Yeah,
God
yeah.
in your life. Be positive.
Wow.
Amen.
That's it.
Yeah, wow.
Thank you for coming on. We really do
Welcome.
appreciate it.
Thank
Wow.
guys.
Thank you, man. We appreciate you. You've given some amazing insight. It's been awesome.
Thank you.
been great.
Thank you
It's
very
been-
much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
No, it's good.